Welcome back to the promo tutorial series. Today, we'll cover terrain and layers to understand how it relates to the player and sorting among the entities in our world. Let's begin. When creating a world with MapleStory Worlds, you'll notice that a lot of the assets that you'll be working with are in 2D. If all the assets are in 2D, how then can we portray depth in our world? Well, this is where layers come in. We can see our pink bean character on screen separated out into different layers labeled 1, 2, and 3, each with a different graphic. Each layer that pink bean is on can be considered a different layer of depth. As each layer is stacked on top of each other, the higher the layer is on the stack, the closer the layer is to the camera. On the right side, we've shuffled the layers around, so let's see what happens to our layers as they get reorganized in the stack. On the left side, with the layer order 1, 2, then 3, with 3 being closest to the camera, we can see that the pink bean in the tuxedo is furthest away from the camera, and we can see pink bean in the headphones in the middle, and finally, our purple spiky haired pink bean is out in front. The pink bean on the baseball cap is actually on the same layer as tuxedo pink bean, but we don't even see that guy because it's covered by a purple spiky haired friend. On the right side, we have layer 3 furthest away, then layer 1, and then layer 2. This time, since our purple spike haired pink bean is furthest in the back, it's covered by the pink bean in the baseball cap, and the pink bean in the headphones is out in front. In this way, by separating out our entities into different layers, we can give the illusion of depth. Let's take a look at a visual example that I have set up in MapleStory Worlds. We have two different types of terrain on the screen. On the left side, we have some mossy terrain on layer 1, and on the right side, we have some blocky terrain on layer 2. In this map, we have 4 different layers, but when you first create your map, you'll likely only have one. So to create a new layer, we'll click on this plus button, and it creates our new layer. Pay no attention to the names of these layers. When we created a new layer, it was labeled layer 5. So what determines the depth of these layers is not the names of these layers, but rather how high up it is on the stack. So layer 4 at the top will be rendered closest to the camera, and layer 1 at the bottom will be furthest away from the camera. Another note is that per layer, we can only have one type of terrain. So if I go into my preset list and go into the tiles, and if I try to draw terrain, I currently am selected on layer 1, we can see that I can draw no problem. But if I try to swap the tile style, we get a warning, warning us that we can only use one tile map style per map. And if we switch to this style, it'll replace all the tile maps on this layer. So if I click yes, it swapped the tile styles on this layer. No problem though, I can switch right back, and I can experiment with the different styles that I'd like. We'll toggle out of tile editor mode, and we'll delete the new layer that we've created by clicking on the trash can button. Now let's press play to see what we currently have. As we mentioned, on the left side we have some mossy terrain on layer 1, and on the right side we have some blocky terrain on layer 2. Now the question is, what layer is our character on? Well, the character's layer will always be the layer of the terrain that it's currently standing on. So because our character is currently on the mossy terrain on the left, it is on layer 1. Then, as soon as we jump onto the blocky terrain, it's on layer 2. Visually, we don't really see a difference, so to verify this, we'll stop play mode, and we'll drag an object out into the scene. We'll drag it out onto layer 2, so we'll make sure to have layer 2 selected, and let's say this castle, we'll drag this out. Because it's on layer 2, it's on top of layer 1, so we can see that our castle renders on top of the grass terrain, the mossy terrain, and then it renders behind our blocky terrain on the right side. Let's place it somewhere around here, and press play again to see what happens now. Now, because our character is currently standing on layer 1, it should render behind the castle on layer 2. And you can see that this is true. As soon as we jump onto the blocks on layer 2, our character swaps that layer. So our character is now on layer 2, and it will render on top of the castle, which is also on layer 2. Our character will always have the highest render order among all of the assets in the same layer. Let's take a look at a little bit more complex example that I've set up. We have a similar setup. On the left side, we have some mossy terrain, and on the right side, we have some blocky terrain. But this time, our mossy terrain is on layer 1, and our blocky terrain is on layer 3. And on top of each of those terrains, we have some entities. We have some tree entities on layer 4, and we can verify this is true by going into the property tab and verifying that our sorting layer is on layer 4. Same for the tree next to it, as well as the bush. To the right of it, we have a fountain, and we have an NPC. both on layer 2, as we can verify by the sorting layer. Now what should happen in this scenario is as soon as our character jumps onto layer 1, because it's standing on layer 1, it should render behind the trees on layer 4. Then when we jump onto layer 3, because it's higher than the fountain and the NPC on layer 2, it should render on top. Let's check if this is true by placing our play hair marker so we don't have to move our spawn point around, and press play. And as expected, we render behind the trees when we stand on layer 1, and we render on top of the fountain and the NPC when we stand on layer 3. So now we know how to determine the order of entities by separating them out into different layers. But how do we separate out entities within the same layer? I have another example for you, and we have a couple entities here, and all of these entities are currently on layer 1. So we can see that this is true by going again into the sorting layer and verifying that this is on layer 1. Same for all of the other assets, we're all in layer 1. In our map layer, we can see that we only have one layer. So all of these should be within the same layer. And I want to, let's say, currently, this plant is rendering on top of the barrel. But if I wanted to render behind the barrel, I can actually modify the order and layer value. So currently, the barrel has an order and layer of 0. If I swap this, let's say to 1, it's higher within the same layer than the plant, which is on order and layer 0. If I say wanted this barrel to render behind the plant, I just have to bump up the orders of both of these objects. So I can say this is order layer 2, and this is order layer 1, and then the barrel is furthest in the back because it has the lowest layer order. Our character, as we mentioned, will always be the highest order within its layer, so let's press play and see what happens. We can see that despite the order numbers, our character always renders on top of the assets in its own layer. In our next example, we have some terrain on layer 1, and we have some water on layer 2. And between these two layers, we have an intersection point. Now, what will happen to our character as it crosses this intersection point? Let's give it a test by placing our play hair marker down and pressing play. As it walks into the intersection point, it actually will stick to the layer it's currently on and not recognize a different layer as terrain. What this means is that as I cross over this intersection point, it will not move on to a different layer. The only time it will interact with the layer is if I jump off of my layer onto the next layer. Then it will only interact with the foothold that it's currently on. Moving right along, we have two different terrains, one that is not attached to the flooring underneath and one that is. When we place our play hair marker and try pressing play, we can see that our character moves right in front of the terrain not attached. And the reason this is because when terrain is not attached to the flooring, even though it's on the same tile, it will not collide or interact with that terrain. The only time it will collide with terrain is if it's attached to the flooring, as you see here. Here we have some terrain stacked vertically on top of each other, and like the previous example, because our terrain is not attached to the floor I'm currently standing on, I cannot actually collide or interact with this terrain. However, my character's head will also not bump into the terrain above it, so I can jump right onto the terrain above, and I can also jump onto terrain below. Here we have a wall that's seemingly connected to the floor that I'm currently standing on, but we have some interesting behavior. As soon as I walk into this wall, I can walk straight past it. Then, when I come out the other side, now I can't go back. The reason this is happening is because this terrain is on a different layer than the terrain next to it. And I'll color this differently so we can see what's going on. But this terrain in red is in a different layer than the terrain in its normal color next to it. So what's happening, and I'll also bring the transparency down so we can see behind it, but terrain on layer 1 extends right up until about here. After this point, it swaps to layer 2. So while it's on layer 1, it does not recognize or collide with the terrain on layer 2. Then, when my character moves onto layer 2, and therefore swapping to layer 2, now it recognizes the wall, and I can collide with it. We'll see this is true by pressing play again. And we can see we're passing straight through this wall because we're still on layer 1. Then now, as we step onto layer 2, we can recognize this wall and we can collide with it. There's a special setting on terrains called isBlockVerticalLine that will prevent characters from jumping past it. So in this special blocky terrain that I've set on layer 3, I have isBlockVerticalLine enabled. And if I press play, we can see that I can move past it. However, and as I jump, I collide into the wall, and I cannot move past the wall as I jump. We know that the character's layer will always adapt to the layer that it's currently standing on, but this also applies to climbable objects such as ladders and ropes. We have a couple ladders here, separated out into different layers, and we have some terrain on layer 1. We know that the character's layer is on layer 1 because it's standing on the terrain on layer 1. And as I move in front and behind these ladders, we can see that I can move in front of the ladder on layer 1, but layers 2, 3, and 4 are rendering on top of my character because they're on a higher render order. As I climb each ladder, we can see that my character's layer adapts to the layer of the ladder, and as I climb each ladder, it swaps to the layer of the climbable object. Now, up until now, I've told you that the character's layer will always adapt to the foothold it's currently standing on, or the object it's interacting with. However, I can actually break this rule. There's a special setting in Default Player that will allow us to break this. We'll search for the rigid body component on our default player and look for the layer setting type. Currently, it's set to all, and this is the behavior we're all used to so far, so it will adapt to the floor it's standing on or the object it's interacting with. However, we have two other settings, climbable and none. Climbable will fix my character's layer to the climbable object that it last interacted with. So, as I interact with layer 1, seemingly nothing has changed because my character's layer was on layer 1 anyway. But now, as I switch to layer 2, because I climbed the ladder on layer 2, my character's layer is swapped to layer 2, and even though I'm currently standing on layer 1, my character's layer is still in front of the ladder on layer 2, but behind the ladders on layer 3 and layer 4. Now if I climb the ladder on layer 3, my character's layer is now layer 3, and even though I'm standing on the platform on layer 1 now, I'm still in front of all 3 ladders. And finally, on the highest layer, layer 4, as I climb that ladder, and I jump off to the platform, my character is now in front of all 4 ladders, and I'm always on layer 4. Now the next layer setting type, none, will always be fixed to the layer that we define for the character. So if we look into our avatar render component, we can see that its sorting layer is currently set to default. If we fix our character's layer, let's say to layer 3, no matter what, our character will always be layer 3. Let's see if this is true by pressing play again. And we can see that I'm in front of all 3 ladders on layer 1, 2, and 3, but I am behind the ladder on layer 4. And that's because I fixed my character to layer 3 by choosing the none option. If I had swapped my character's layer out to a different layer, let's say layer 2, and I press play again, my character is on top of layers 1 and 2, but behind layers 3 and 4. We'll reset my setting back to all, and change my character sorting layer back to default. Up until now, we've been working with the MapleTile terrain type, but as discussed in the last video, we actually have more terrain types to work with. If we go up into the tile editor and hold it down, we can see that we have MapleTile, RectTile, and SideView RectTile. Let's swap to the RectTile type, and it'll give us a warning that it'll clear out all of the tiles and the assets in our map. That's fine. We'll click yes, and it's swapped to RectTile mode. Now, in this mode, we can place tiles down, just like MapleTile, but we have to create a tile set. I've already created one here, but to do so, we can just click on the plus button and choose from one of the templates. Let's say Hennessy's, and we can name our tile set. We can say my new tile set. And just like that, we've created our new tile set in the theme of Hennessy's. Let's go up in the corner and click on the fill tool And we'll choose this grass and we'll click, and our entire map has been filled with grass. Then we can choose the different types of terrain and we can place it down. So let's swap to our paint box and let's choose some blocks here. We can click and drag and place some blocky terrain, and we'll place some more objects in the corners. And as you can see, we can choose from our tile set and place down the different blocks into our grid to create our terrain. If we press play now, and we'll place a play here marker to right there and press play, we can see that our character is now in a top-down view and no longer in the side view that we had been used to with the maple tiles. We can pass over our terrain, but let's say we wanted to make some terrain that we cannot pass by. So next to it, we have some water tiles down here. So let's place these down and not allow the character pass by these. If we press play now, our character can still walk onto the water, but we want this water to block our movement. So to do so, we'll click on this edit button in the top right corner of our tile set, and we'll scroll all the way down to all the water tiles, and we'll toggle our passability, and all of these green crosshairs will toggle red, blocking the movement. And what this will do is block movement onto the tile. So now that we've blocked all the water tiles, we'll click on the edit button once more and press play to test it once again. And now we can no longer pass by our water tiles. Now we have one more terrain type to go over, and that is a side view RectTile mode. So we'll swap into that mode by going into the side view RectTile mode. We'll confirm the reset of our tile placement, and we've swapped to RectTile mode. Now this is very similar to the maple tile. However, the only difference being that we can now import our own custom tiles to use as the side view platformer. We don't want to use the tile set that we use for the RectTile mode. We want to use our own tile sets for platformer. If we place the tiles down right now, it doesn't look great for our side view platformer. So instead, we'll go into my resource storage and make sure that we have my resource selected. And we can see that I've already imported some assets here, but to import your own custom assets, you can choose a specific folder to drop them in. Doesn't matter which one, just make sure that it fits to the category that you'd like so that it's easier to find later. And we'll click on the plus button on the left side here. Then we can navigate to our assets and find all of those assets and click open. That will trigger the importing process and import all of those assets into our world. Once those assets have completed importing, then we'll go back into here and we will click on the plus button again. And this time we'll create an empty tile set. We'll name this SideView RectTile set. Then we'll go into the bottom left corner and click on Add Resource Storage Image. From the My Resource folder, we'll click on the 4 assets that we've imported. And we'll click on the X button once we've confirmed that these assets have been imported. Then we'll click on our box selection tool. Then we can place our newly imported tiles down just like we did for the RectTile mode. Now, if we play from this state, let's place our play here marker and try pressing play. And we can see that our character just falls straight through our tiles. Now, to make these tiles interactable, we have to go into our edit mode again and go into passability, and we have to toggle these off. Now, if we exit edit mode and try pressing play again, this time we can finally interact with our tiles and we can play through our side view RectTile mode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. Today we've gone over terrain and various terrain types. Next time, we'll go into a little bit more detail about entities, components, and properties.